Welcome to Reclassified. 8 billion and counting. That is the estimated current human population, an impressive feat considering roughly 100 years ago, the human race first hit the 2 billion mark for concurrently living humans in its existence. In other words, out of the hundreds of thousands of years since evolution, this is the largest group of apes to ever sit around at the same time. With that comes two sides, where on one hand great advancements in technology have been put on display, showcasing human ingenuity and survival. Conversely is the ballooning number of the most destructive fauna the planet has ever seen. Current projections are showing the human population will tap out at around 10 billion before plateauing, followed by a slow decline. While there exists estimates of a rough doubling of the population, that is highly unlikely due to the issue we will take a look at today. In the early 1900s, overpopulation was a large buzz for many economists, anthropologists, and other sociologists as the world was hitting growth milestones never seen before. The sentiment was largely pushed into the mainstream by a Stanford entomologist known as Paul Ehrlich and his book The Population Bomb in 1968. The claims were severe to say the least, and predicted mass deaths in excess of hundreds of millions due to famine and other socio-environmental catastrophes. He claimed all this would lead to widespread upheaval and disastrous consequences, all due to the exponential growth in the population. Safe to say a near totality, if not all of his predictions fell flat, with people nowadays more likely to die of obesity than hunger, and most importantly, the great dampening of human birth rates. But at the time, the book in general claims gained establishment approval. Many reproductive policies were exported globally in part due to this. Although it played hand in hand with the technological proliferation of birth control and the pill in the 60s, the underlying issue of population control was still tied into it. The Chinese one-child policy was modeled based on this theory. The CCP under Deng was transitioning from a Marxist, centrally planned economy to one with more capitalist reforms. The worry was a large working base was no longer viable, and its projected growth at the time would be too consequential for its future. The UNFPA took part in the rollout, garnering large criticisms from the US. This partly led to the Reagan and Bush administrations defunding the program during their presidencies. Another part was their conservative stances when it came to abortion and various family planning methods the agency was funding across the world. The one-child policy wasn't as universal as postulated either. There were many exceptions, such as if the first child was a girl, ethnic minority, region, or various other caveats. This meant that the policy didn't affect every single family as is, and the actual effect on the population is debatable. But at the end of it, it was an answer to a wrong question. The Chinese government rolled back the policy on the affected populations as it became clearer their demographic issue wasn't what they thought it was. China is not alone in this downward trend. The TFR, or total fertility rate, is the estimated number of children the average woman will have across their childbearing years, absent external factors like adverse health and other socio-economic issues such as immigration. In terms of countries excluding small territories, South Korea is the worst in the world. Italy, Finland, and Spain are also at the bottom end with Japan when it comes to TFR, even with high government incentives for maternity and childcare. Showing the problem extends further than just an expense issue. The question obviously is, why is this bad? Two main areas. 1. Labor pool, and 2. Economic redistribution. Most people interact with the economy broadly under those two banners. The workforce participation that in turn drives consumption of goods and services, then in turn public sector which serves the people's needs, is usually roughly 35–55% of GDP in developed nations. The world has been marred with labor shortages even before COVID, with many industries not being able to fill their workforce no matter the pay. The issue spans every single developed country on the planet. Migration from undeveloped nations has been the current trend to pad the gaps in workforce, but that also has its own limits, as the countries of origin start to face similar demographic issues coupled with the socio-economic frictions it entails. Also, labor force participation rates peaked in the developing world for both men and women. This is projected to fall through to the 2030s, worsening the workforce deficiency. That directly feeds into number 2. The historical trend of having many kids was useful due to high mortality rates all through childhood and as a subcomponent of future economic investment. The first part was largely solved through advancements in tech, while the second part was repackaged into the current public system. Most countries are in debt to themselves, specifically their expected children. Countries borrow money with the confidence that a future tax base will be able to pay it back and so on. Instead of one family having 10 kids who stabilize their aging communities, the current model created a large pot where everyone pays into it, so whether 0 or 3 kids, you still get a payout from the pool. With a high concentration of input coming from top earners, the redistribution model relies on there being input that stops the output from exceeding limits it can't manage. If the margin of outflows exceeds a manageable rate, the entire system will crumble. Most government expenditures already surpass their revenue, issue just being by how much. That includes global powers like the US, whose government bonds are seen as the new gold standard based on its military strength, and most importantly, socio-economic stability. With that, the government will either have to raise taxes on everyone or limit the outflows. For example, Spain, a country at the bottom end of the TFR list, has been increasing its retirement age backed by its unions to maintain the social welfare system. Similarly, the EU average retirement age will keep rising past 2030 as all countries raise their age and reduce their payouts to keep the system running due to the demographic issue. Healthcare and pensions are usually the largest costs in the entire system, and that is why they are at the forefront. Most people ignore this, which is quite astounding in a debt-based economy, where consumption is largely done through borrowing of money from lenders who hold bonds and funds directly tied to governments. Majority of loans in the US for schools, mortgages, cars are subsidized or fully government-backed, which even makes it harder to ignore how quickly things will unravel. So why is the sentiment of overpopulation still held on strongly, even as governments across the world are struggling to maintain an outflow deficit in the face of this demographic challenge? I like to term this as the layman's lag. People will broadly cling on to long-held zeitgeists in the face of confounding evidence. Wider societal theories are usually harder to spot in day-to-day life. Telling someone stuck in traffic 6 days a week how there is a population decline on the horizon makes you sound dense. You might also claim I am making severe claims just in the other direction, but no. All my statements are policies currently being passed and ongoing countrywide assessments of various industries. These are issues that countries are rushing as we speak to find solutions for. In the future, the labor pool might be solved with AI and sophisticated automation. Other technological inventions and socio-cultural realignments might also dampen the current trends, so it's still open to change. But if you believe you are immune to this cliff, just ask yourself how much of your lifestyle is afforded with money you currently own. If not, who exactly are you borrowing from? How reliant are you on a government that can manage its debt, and how long your country's pension fund is estimated to last at its current outflow? See you next chapter.